ARCADUS, and here today I'm going to talk to you about our partnership with RSET. And so what RSET can help us with is essentially provide an additional layer to provide training resources to, it really could be focused on government sector, but it's going to be mostly towards first responders. So police, fire, medical, and potentially even military type situations. And what RSET can do for us is it allows us to take, once the scan has been completed with a Matterport, we can take that OBJ file, we can draw it down, and we can bring it into the RSET ecosystem. And once it's in there, it very quickly gets dropped into almost like a game-like environment, where you can drop an actual NPC down into it and you can walk around. So you can go beyond where the photospheres are and really start to get granular with whatever the situation is. Now, some of the best use cases for this are going to be, right now we're working on is a campaign with fire. So fire investigators who need to look into potential injury or a death of a firefighter in an incident, they can scan the entire location and then they can rebuild and restructure everything that happened on that day. And they can build out a scenario to help better train other firefighters on how to either not make a mistake or the signs that they need to look for in those really critical situations. So this has been deployed in a couple different ways, but it's a very powerful technique. And one of the really interesting things about it, and what we're working on fire investigators as well as insurance companies, is being able to marry multiple OBJs into one model. So think of if one agency were to do a drone photogrammetry model, that really lives independent of anything that you would do with Matterport. But with RSET, you're able to actually marry those models together. You take the drone and you underlay the terrestrial model and you make it to where when you drop your person in, you can not only walk the entire area, and that could be a huge area, but you can also then walk through the door and enter seamlessly into the Matterport model. The other good avenue of this is if you've got multiple buildings that were part of a critical event and you don't want to have access all over the place, you can put all of those models side by side and then make it to where you can walk between them. So those are some really good use cases. This is going to be deployed potentially as training scenarios for law enforcement, for police, for education. Think of having a school scanned and being able to do training scenarios inside of those schools. The other cool things you can do with it is you can actually drop 3D assets directly into the model. You can set fire to things. You can train on medical responses, so you can have an NPC that's on the ground having a heart attack and you judge how the response of that goes. There's tons and tons of use cases for it, and it's just another partnership that I'm really excited about. And we also have it with our partnership with Carosoft to where we can get them directly onto government contract vehicles and make it really easy for anybody and any agency who wants to procure that to do so.
If you're a Matterport service provider, what are the pain points of the local police, the local fire, the local emergency services that they would find using Matterport plus RSET plus ARCADUS a helpful, useful solution?
So I would say first and foremost is going to be ease of use, and then second would probably be security. So first, ease of use. Everybody knows that Matterport has probably the easiest solution in actually capturing. So if you need to have certain times when it has to be an officer that's responding, they're then able to do the capture. As a service provider, you can contract with them for non-critical events where maybe it's a space that doesn't need that high level of security, and you're able to go and do it. And as we all know, that's a very easy process. So then the other part of it is security. Now, security is going to be very important because when you're talking about something that's going to go to jury, it's going to go to trial, you need to know and verify where that data has been. It needs to be audited, it needs to be logged, and we need to know who has had access of it. And that's really where the GovCloud comes in, and it allows us to maintain all of those necessities that make it to where any government agency, including SLED, law enforcement, fire, all of those agencies are going to be confident in the data that they put up is not going to end up on YouTube someplace.
So Matterport recently announced a strategic alliance with your company, ARCADUS, and so that's what enables a Matterport model to be able to live in a government cloud like Matterport, but with other features and benefits.
Right. So we kind of move beyond.
What those features and benefits are of the problem that the GovCloud solves that's different from the Matterport cloud?
So GovCloud, specifically when we're talking about government agencies, there's a couple solutions there. The primary obviously is going to be security and access. So making sure that everything is secure in where it is and the people who are accessing it are allowed to be accessing it. So every user comes with an SSO. In addition to that, everything is logged and audited. So if you need to pull a report for who's been accessing the models, that's all part of that. The other thing is it has a different set of the structure. So there's really only one Matterport for Government account. It's not like you have different tiers. You just basically get the services or the spaces that you need. And then beyond that, if you need to always have, let's say you need to consistently pull down matter packs to be able to integrate into RSET, you can download an archive module or a matter pack module where instead of it being based on just when you click to order it, it allows the account to have unlimited access to matter pack downloads. The same thing is true for archiving. So it makes it to where if you have, like for me, a law enforcement agency that needs to be able to retain any of their cases in perpetuity, they can do so because they can just archive it with an unlimited backdrop to allow them to come back to that case should it be pulled back up into court again. So those are just kind of a couple high points, but they're really important to pivot on, because if you have an agency, they're going to have a budget, and that budget is going to be a fixed budget. They're going to have $50,000 for the year. It can't change. Whereas if they're on the standard server and they need to make a purchase of a matter pack, or they go over on their archiving, that's going to change, right? They can't make that purchase. So having it all built into the Matterport for Government service is really what helps make it a robust system to be able to deploy on an annual basis.
So for clarification, we're standing in front of the Matterport Pro 3 camera. That is not necessary in order to work with Matterport plus RSET, because RSET is actually using the Matter pack.
Correct. They're using the OBJ file.
So you can use either a Matterport Pro 2 or Pro 3 camera for law enforcement,
right,
for fire department, emergency medical services, for police.
Yep.
Knowing that the RSET platform thrives using the Matterport OBJ file, the object file.
Correct. And if you happen to have an OBJ from another provider, you could basically marry it into the same instance with something that came from Matterport. So it doesn't need to be just a Matterport camera. You can pull it from another source and be able to integrate it as well.
So if you're a Matterport service provider and you're talking to police, fire, or emergency medical services, you could offer the solution with Matterport plus RSET. The problems that you'll run into are the following, where it then makes sense to have ARCADUS that working in conjunction with Terrasoft, working in conjunction with AWS GovCloud. Those problems that get solved by working with you are?
So first and foremost is experience and past performance. So I am a retired law enforcement, and so I have the ability to understand deeply what the use cases are and why they need access to these things, as well as be able to speak their language on how to deploy it and make sure that it's not something that goes to an agency and then sits on a shelf. That's a significant value that I bring. But then in addition to that, being able to deploy a government contract through Terrasoft will allow us basically to not have to manage the procurement bidding process. So if we can prove that we're a sole source and that we are the only ones who have access to, like, say, the GSA schedule or SOUP or ITES, then that really helps facilitate the purchase in a much smoother fashion, to where it's a matter of, can you provide it, and not, let me go out and bid 30 different agencies or 30 different MSPs in order to find out who the lowest bidder is. So it helps you in the process, and we're more than happy to be that point of contact, to where we can either speak to the law enforcement agency, the fire departments, whoever it may be, on your behalf, or we can help kind of guide and train you on what some of that conversation, how it might go, some of the questions they might ask you, and how you could potentially respond to them.
So the problems that a Matterport service provider might hear when getting close to a done deal with a fire department the police department, emergency medical services will sound something like either I need to be on AWS GovCloud, can you do that? I need to be working with Carasoft because they're the entity that eliminates us having to put things out on bid.
Right.
Are there other problems of how it would get stated to a Matterport service provider that immediately comes back and says, oh, you really need to be working with ARCADUS, you need to be working with ARCADUS that works with Carasoft, you need to be working with ARCADUS because it also works with AWS GovCloud.
So the other potential thing that could happen is they would want you to be on their vendor list, which is different in everywhere, but essentially the requirement could be that you are a registered supplier, a dedicated vendor with the state before you can ever do anything. So we recently went through this with Tennessee to create a solution for Tennessee Bureau of Investigations. The cool thing is, especially with Carasoft, if you've got any agency that has specific geographic requirements, then they can help solve that. So one of the ones they helped solve with us was within Washington, DC, and that was really a location that we weren't able to have access to, but we're able to get through Carasoft Partnership. So it's going to be all about how much you want to deploy, how many resources you want to deploy to registering to these state agencies and try and be a supplier and a vendor, or if you want us to be that avenue of attack for you to where we can go and do all of that contracting, all of that paperwork to make it to where we can just purchase it directly for you.
Javan, thanks for your time. Appreciate your help.